welcome. There's lots of people who are joining us from, I imagine, all over the world as you have gathered a fan base from around the world. Here we are in Vancouver, BC, Canada. My name's Jennifer Clement. I'm zooming in from Vancouver Film School here in Vancouver, and I'm here with the wonderful Briana Buckmaster, who's also in Vancouver. We're thrilled to have a wonderful group of people joining us. Just to let you know, we'll take a few moments as we gather people as they're arriving. We will be having a Q&A in the latter half of our talk, and there is a Q&A box of which you can add your questions, and we will get to those a bit later. If there is something, if you want to tell us where you're from or you have something that you want to share, you can use the chat. But please use the Q&A box for all of your wonderful questions to Briana. And we're going to get started in a few moments. So happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Have you had a St. Patty's toast yet, Briana? Tell us the truth.
No, but I mean, it's waiting.
It's good. Well,
it's waiting. Cheers to you, my lady. Cheers.
There we go. I've got tea and a mask, but I will be having my Irish toast later.
You're still at work.
I'm still at work, so after work, I will enjoy. Have you ever been to Ireland?
No. Actually, no.
Not yet.
You know what? That's what happens now. Like, I went from not traveling at all, really, to traveling so often that I don't know where I've been. Like, and I only go for a few days at a time. And often you don't see anything outside of the airport or the convention center or hotel.
Oh, because of all the supernatural conventions. Must be an amazing experience.
Oh, unbelievable. Game changer. I mean, what an adventure. But yeah, at some point, I remember when I first started doing them, I was like, I'm going to go out every single time and see something in the city. And then after a couple of years, I was like, I'm tired. I'm asleep.
Well, because you're seeing people all day and it must be so exciting.
It's a big energy output. That's for sure.
It's a performance in and of itself. So, well, it looks like we've got an amazing crew of people already. So I think we're going to, jump in, and I know people will be joining us along the way. But once again, welcome everybody to this event with Briana Buckmaster here at Vancouver Film School. It is always such an honor for me. I wish we could do these in person, but there's something really exciting and almost intimate in a way in this Zoom world that we can connect with people from all over the world, and we don't have to get on a plane, and we can do so right now. And that always excites me so much. And I had the opportunity to meet Briana a couple of weeks ago, and this is a dynamic dynamo of a woman. And seeing as it's International Women's Day we just finished, and it's International Women's Month to look at women in history, I think this woman right here is making history by what she's doing as an actor and singer and activist. It's such an impressive career already. So I'm so thrilled that you're joining us to share some of your insights and some of your thoughts and feelings. To me, it's so important that we gather and share not just what people see, the glossy things at a conference or on TV, but what the work, the grit, the resilience, all the effort, the sweat, equity that goes into making a career. So I'm really looking forward to having that conversation. Welcome to Briana Buckmaster. She, just so you know, most of you probably know a lot about her already, but this woman is an actor, singer, voice actor. She's originally from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and she went to the amazing Grant MacEwan University in Edmonton, where she received her diploma. She worked at if you don't know of Teatro La Quintessina, am I saying it right? Quintessina. An amazing company that I come from the world of the theater, and this is a gem of a theater company that you worked with in your earlier years. But now you can see her as Sheriff Donna on Supernatural, where she really broke a lot of new ground on that show. You can also see her in Dory Vandango and Chip and Potato. You can see her on social media. We'll have so much to talk about. This is Briana Buckmaster. Do you want to say anything after all of that?
No, I just want to say thank you. You know, it's so funny, is that I think sometimes, and especially at this time during, I'm not weeping, my eye is leaking. So if I do this every once in a while, it's not because I'm verklempt. We'll get to that later, I'm sure. But um, it's so funny during this time that we're so, especially as performers, we're so used to seeing our reflection in other people. And during a pandemic or a quarantine or a lockdown where we don't have even auditions, you're auditioning to a camera instead of people. So you really don't have that reflection back. So it's our jobs to be doing that work to make sure we don't need to seek those reflections. We're not outsourcing, our worth. And so I have been doing that work, and it's been a gift to have time to do that work. However, I am so flattered, and I'm so grateful for your sweet words about the things that I bring to the world and to this industry. So thank you so much for that very, very warm introduction. I will put that in my love drawer, and I will sleep with it under my pillow.
Well, now I am crying.
Oh, stop.
I think it's just it is this thing where I have felt blessed because we have been here safely delivering actor training on campus in a very particular time in a new way, just like the film and television industry. So I've been lucky enough to still keep that heartbeat of my creativity of what I love alive. But it is a very particular time, and as you say, this sense that we can reflect inwards on what really matters, but at the same time be able to reach out and have all these people from around the world joining us. And even though I can't see everybody, I do. It's amazing to feel that energy and to
Yeah.
and to realize how important it is that we do connect to each other. And I think as a woman, what one of the things to sort of jump right in is finding your voice. And I don't just mean your lovely singing voice, but your voice to speak your mind or to talk about difficult things. And I was really amazed at your the podcast that you created. I mean, I think one of the things I'm so impressed by is the fact that you are creating on so many levels, and having your the podcast, the Wayward podcast with Kim Rhodes. I mean, 800. I was 840, 475 downloads, which is fairly impressive number. But I think what was really impressive was all the difficult subject matters that you guys were tackling. And I just want to, the quote that you had on there, I did really move me. And I want you to just maybe talk about finding your voice there and sharing that out. But the quote that I saw on this, it says, "We may have wandered off the path, but we are in the right place. We choose to celebrate it. Let's be messy. Let's be human. Let's be wayward AF." That is the embodiment of being empowered. And as a woman, tell me where that inspiration came from and why that's important to you.
So it came from a few places. So wayward is a word that's used a lot in fandom and in the show Supernatural. Carry On, My Wayward Sons is, of course, kind of the official, unofficial theme song of the show. And then the spinoff, which we can get to later, was called Wayward Sisters. But even before the spinoff, there was a section of the fandom that was called Wayward Daughters. That was kind of started by two friends of ours that are in the fandom, Riley and Betty. And early on, when I first came on, they said, "Can we start, with your permission, this kind of this fan base that's kind of your fan base?" And the idea of the fan base was they wanted to see the show happen. So they had this fan base called Wayward Daughters before the spinoff. So the spinoff was actually non-officially, it was loosely based on this idea that the fans kind of were cultivating and promoting, which was the idea of young girls being taught how to be hunters of the supernatural by characters Jodie and Donna. So that's kind of how that started. And then Wayward Sisters happened, which was a massive deal to a lot of people.
Huge.
And
unfortunately, the face of Supernatural, and in terms of women and the opportunity that maybe there'd be this spin-off. But
and honestly, seeing two women on a network that doesn't necessarily, pride themselves on having the kind of content that would have two women, over the age of 35 in lead roles.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that was a big deal, and it was also, I think, very affirming for me. I can't speak on the fans, but I would think that it made a lot of people feel heard and seen. And then when they made the choice not to pick it up, I remember going, like, the next convention I saw Kim Rhodes. And Kim Rhodes and I have been, partners in crime, I would say, for a long time. We work together at the conventions. We're very yin and yang, and we kind of work off of each other. We've cultivated this very um, intimate and mature friendship, like a sisterhood. And so we're able to talk to each other. We know how to approach each other with things. And I know about Kim, she and I are very different in the way that I am very jump first, look second,
Yes.
and she is the opposite of that. And so when I bring her ideas, which I do a lot, I have a lot of ideas, and as we are with ideas, they're not always good, but I bring her a lot of ideas, and she'll go, whether she's interested or not. And I brought her an idea for a podcast. And I said, don't answer me. Don't answer me now.
Right.
But I basically was like, we have ourselves. Nobody owns us as people, and our fan base, our people within the fandom are fans of us as well as Supernatural, but they're fans of us and our voices. And so I was like, I wanted to continue to cultivate and inspire other people to use their voices and remind other people that there are people out there hearing them and that their voices need to be heard. And so, I brought her this idea and she said, let me think about it. And then, we ended up doing it. We ended up getting this big spread in Entertainment Weekly for it. And it ended up being a much bigger deal than we thought it was going to be. We did one episode a week. We did over 100 episodes, and we didn't stop until the pandemic hit. And then we were both just overloaded with parenting. We're both our primary caregivers for our children then. But the podcast, we didn't actually have that many guests on. The podcast was us riffing on ideas, usually that the fandom brought to us, or at least the podcast fans brought to us, about stuff they wanted to hear our thoughts on. And we always used to say at the end of each podcast episode, we go, well, I guess we saved the world, because we just go, oh, we'd have these massive epiphanies and discoveries in each episode. But it was the whole Wayward community, including the podcast, is kind of a takeoff of the idea that I think as women, or people identifying as women, find that we have often been shamed for thinking things that are not are out of the norm, for speaking our minds. I know that I felt that way, or I felt nervous about being disliked.
Yes.
I've also felt ashamed and felt like I was being disliked for the way I looked, or for my idiosyncrasies and my personality, for being I'm loud and audacious, and so this was kind of a space where we could create for people who felt that they didn't belong in the world, and we were there to remind them that they did, that everybody belongs.
I think, and looking at all the different topics that you've covered in that, and it's such a, to me, to take, I think to me that the spirit of which you've created that with Kim is just understanding that background is really powerful, because I think sometimes, well, as any woman or person for that matter, sometimes feels like we question ourselves, and here you are. You have an opportunity like Sheriff Donna on Supernatural, which is one of those, groundbreaking, life-changing experiences that was a role that you auditioned for and you got, but you never knew that it would continue. And obviously it's like alchemy, like you brought something to that role that spoke to the writers, that spoke to that show that then spoke to those fans, that grew and was allowed to find its sort of strength and power, but then to also allow that spin off yourselves, even if the powers that be in the networks maybe weren't able to deliver on what might have been fantastic. I'm sure it would have been fantastic. You out of that spirit, the two of you took it on yourselves to make that. And to me, that's that chutzpah. That's that, even though we in our careers, we have these things like, yay, I get this incredible role. But then there's disappointments along the way, like maybe that spin-off doesn't happen, or how do I find my voice, or am I allowed to speak my truth? In those moments, we have to question ourselves and dig deep, and that speaks to that sort of grit. Can you speak to those moments in having that incredible high of this show and Supernatural and all that comes with it, but then also wrestling with some of these opportunities that we might hit the glass ceiling as women or people. How do you break through that?
Well, it was funny when I started doing Supernatural. I was very new to working in television, very just maybe I'd only been auditioning for a year, maybe.
Right.
And so it really kind of, I had been an actor for decades. I had getting kind of thrown into the, quote unquote, the Hollywood cog. It was, I did have a lot of imposter syndrome for sure. And there are a lot of personalities, and personalities, I say that not as like good and bad personalities, just like everybody's kind of carrying their stuff with them that comes along with the rejection of being an actor, the constant rejection of being an actor. So I kind of realized early on that there was early on when I started working, there was a lot of opinions, opinions, because what happened is I became a shiny star very quickly. And then when a person becomes a shiny star, there's two things that people usually react to: is they either try to dim that star, or they kind of try to, attach themselves to it.
Right.
And like neither of them really, either we're going to pull you down, or I'm going to have you take me with you.
Yes.
And so the ones who want to pull you down, were often people who were in power, or people who seemed to have more power than me. And now looking back, I realize that, often people who are trying to do that don't have,
right.
They're trying to create power. Yes. But at the time, I really felt like, people, I had a manager, an agent once, tell me that I needed to start acting a little less confident because it was making people uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, and now I go, well, that's ridiculous.
And would they say that to a man? I don't know.
Exactly. But at the time, I was like, all I thought was, oh, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable.
Of course.
Like, that's the last thing I want to do. But I think that all that we can do when we are faced with, the highs and lows, it's like, the highs and lows, you think of it as like a drug, right? Where, you get this big hit, you feel very good, and then the next thing feels so awful that you're just like, I got to try to create that next big hit. I got to find it somehow. And it become a desperate search for that next big hit. And our work is to just steady ourselves. Yes. To make sure that we're doing the work for the work. Like I did an audition last night here in my bedroom. I still have the blue sheet up. Yes. And I was, I've had a lot of auditions during the pandemic, a lot. It might just seem like a lot because they are in my bedroom, but, we're doing them. I'm taping. I don't love taping. I'm learning to love taping because I love being in the room with people more than putting stuff on tape. But I said to my partner who helps me with my auditions, I was like, I'm going to start treating these tapes like the best time in the world. Like if we can take the autonomy back from our careers and the power back from other people in terms of what brings us joy, like you have no control over who's going to hire you,
Yes.
but you do have control over what brings you joy. So it's up to you whether that doing that tape is going to make you, joyful or miserable. And so that's what I try to focus on now, because even over the last month or two, there's been so many like you're like on hold for something or you're shortlisted or
Right.
whatever.
The kind
And
of,
there's so many like close calls that I take them all at the same plane.
yes.
Anything, if it's a no, if it's a that was great, if it's a you're probably going to book it, it's all here. Because if I am seeking all of those little hits for, any kind of identity or
Validation from the outside world.
validation,
Yeah.
then I'm hooked, man, because then they have the power. I'm taking all of my validation back.
And that, I think that is the essence of being empowered. I'm sure we're welcoming many supernatural fans. We're also welcoming many actors who have careers going already, and we are also welcoming a lot of our VFS students and
I love that.
alumni who may be joining us. And I think that's something we all share in terms of whether you are, whatever you're putting yourself out for, or whatever matters, that taking back what you can do. I mean, that is in terms of the work itself, and what is that, where do we find satisfaction? And we can't rely on other people giving it to us. We have to ultimately learn to cultivate or create that for ourselves. And I think that's when I look at, your career. I mean, starting in the theater, which is something that we share, the kind of work ethic, the training that you received. Can you talk a little bit about all those hours, that you put into the craft, which is sometimes people forget. I think most of us come to acting because there's something that draws us to storytelling and
Mm.
being a part of that. But often in the shiny lights of, trying to make it, or celebrity, or social media hits, we can get caught out, like you say,
Yeah.
by the externals. But ultimately, when you get back to a script and story and character, and in the theater, it is really in the trenches of that. Can you tell us a little bit about your beginnings, and about what that did for you in terms of your resilience and grit, how you built that foundation of that, in your training and in your theater experience?
I love that. I love talking about theater. Even talking about it makes me so I love that part of my life, and I hope to go back to it someday. And most of my best friends are theater actors or comedians, and so much of that at this time has come to kind of a halt.
Oh, it's
And my heart
devastating.
goes out to that community, that theater community, which still has my heart more than anything. My
Hmm.
heart and my soul truly are with theater. So I when I was little, I randomly, I grew up in a farm and we had like two channels, and
Oh,
a commercial came on for a regional production that was coming through Regina, Saskatchewan, of Les Mis. And I said to mom, I'm like, I want to see that. I want that for my Christmas present. And she got me
wow.
tickets to it. And so I was 11, and she took me to say Les Mis, and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. And that was it
Wow.
for the rest. I mean, I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And I loved to sing when I was a kid. I remember, there was this little kids pop group that I had a cassette tape of called the Mini Pops.
Oh,
And I asked my mom when I was little if I could write a letter to them to ask if I could join them. So I always loved to sing. I loved to perform. I loved to entertain. I didn't know anything about acting. I didn't really know what that was. But I saw Les Mis, and I know how I felt, and with the swells of the orchestra and
yes.
people singing and the emotion, I was like, oh, that looks dope. So so from then on, I kind of just always said I was going to do that. Now, I didn't grow up with a very wealthy family, so I didn't have dance classes or singing lessons or anything. My mom, when I was in high school, I joined a group called Saskatchewan Express, which was like a song and dance group, and they put on the school. So after school, when I was in high school,
Great.
I'd drive to Regina from Moose Jaw and go to these classes late at night in my car that
Wow.
had no heat. Anyway, I just remember like all my other friends were, partying, or they're like having sleepovers, and I would like drive 45 minutes like every night to go to these classes in Regina just to learn, a number from cats. Do you know what I mean?
But that's not
And it was
focus,
heaven.
right?
Yeah,
It's
I
like
just
that's the
knew.
decision. You can go partying, hanging out, or am I going to go rehearse a song from Cats?
Yeah.
And there's kind of, even at that stage, that's a discipline to make that choice and to go for it already.
And it was like, it was a no-brainer for me. Like, it was a discipline because, once you sign up, then it's like, oh, it's cold, I don't want to go, or I'm tired, or I want to dance tonight, or whatever it is. But when it's a true passion, it truly doesn't feel like that much work. And so, right out of high school, or when I was in grade 12, I auditioned for the theater program at Grant McEwen University. And which was a theater audition is usually like two contrasting songs. And I maybe did like a dance call, like a mini dance call, and then had to do a monologue. I think I did a monologue from Romeo and Juliet or something. And I didn't get accepted into the program.
Oh my gosh.
I got put on the waiting list. And I was so sad. I was so sad. And I got in the interim accepted into the touring show of Saskatchewan Express, which is a song and dance troupe. And then I think like 2 weeks before the program was supposed to start, I got accepted into the program. And so I had to just pull my stuff together. In the program, for some of you who don't know, is in Edmonton. So it's a different province. So I had to like find an apartment and find roommates and all this. But I went, and going to that school ended up changing my life in so many ways, because they did teach me, as you were mentioning, grit. That program is 6 days a week, 13 hours a day. It is nonstop. It is hardcore, but you're with, I think like 15 other students you do 2 years with.
It's like nonstop. That you find the peeps that you go, oh, these are the people that I connect to. This is what I love.
And again, it's just like you eat, sleep, drink theater.
Right.
I was in classes during the day, and I was performing shows at night. It is the dream for a young theater actor. I mean, I was maybe 18. It was my dream. And then what happened was Stuart Lemoyne, who is one of Canada's most brilliant playwrights.
Incredible.
And he owns the company Teatro La Quindicina, which was one of the best, and still is one of the best theater companies in Edmonton. He came and guest directed one of our shows, and he wrote the show with me as the lead character. Wow. It's a very, very, very funny show called Orlando Unhinged. And then after I graduated, he called me and asked me if I wanted to be in his season opener. So then he wrote my very first professional show called On the Banks of the Nut. And I played Noreen Cuthbert. And the rest is kind of history, because in Edmonton, the theater community is so small that, I mean, it's not that small. It's intimate. Everybody kind of knows each other. There's tons of theater that gets produced in Edmonton. It's one of the biggest theater towns in Canada.
Yes.
And because he kind of introduced me to the theater world as a professional, I then started to book shows through that company. And I have been a company member of Teatro ever since. Like the last show I went and did, I did a New Year's show with them like 3 years ago.
Wow.
A New Year's show, they only give you like a week to memorize or something like that. Yes. It's put on very quickly, but it's so fun. Anyway, so grateful to that company. They are my home. Jeff Haslam as well is a mentor of mine, and that they taught me how to not just show up, but they really taught me how to perform. They taught me really small things like Jeff Haslam would teach me a lot about dialects. They would teach me to slow down, where to slow down and speed up, because I have a verbal acuity to my speech that I can talk really, really fast. They taught me how to be a proper company member, which I think is something that people who work solely in television don't get the opportunity to learn.
Yes, that family.
But yeah, um, I think that had I not learned some of those things, I wouldn't know how to stick it out, because you do
Yeah.
have to learn different aspects that you love about the work. It's not just about booking the job, and it's not just about performing for a big audience, because sometimes there's neither of those things and you
Right.
still are an actor, you know?
And 8 shows a week, putting that
Oh,
in. And I mean, in a way, in terms of that creativity and being a part of a company that is, you're part of that creative collaboration. And
oh
obviously
yeah.
I see in your, it must be written somewhere in your DNA in terms of singing and acting and creating and going out in new ways to make your work. That transition from the theater and making that transition to Vancouver. I don't even know if I said, my name's Jennifer Clement. It says that on the little thing, but I'm the head of acting at Vancouver Film School, an actor by trade before I became an actor educator. But we share something in the sense of, besides talking loudly and quickly, a love of food. And I know there's that sense of actors when you're starting your career and maybe you make a change, like moving from the theater and coming to Vancouver, and starting to open that door into film and television, which is something I did as well. And we share that the food element, a love of food, not just eating it, but instead of just working at restaurants, which many actors do, it's a great gig, but actually starting a food truck. I opened a restaurant with a bunch of actors for about 10 years while I was acting in film and television.
That's
And I know
amazing.
you had a food truck for a while. Um, to me, that's that spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
that you're just going to go, like, it's creative too, and that you're trying to make your way in this industry. The industry isn't necessarily going to hand you everything on a silver platter. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
effort. What was that transition from the theater like to come to Vancouver and start this next stage of your career pre Supernatural?
Well, the food truck honestly was kind of just, it just landed in our lap. Now we don't have a food truck anymore, and we did end up eventually opening up a small restaurant, and then we ended up selling the restaurant.
Perfect.
But yeah, I think that when I graduated from theater school, I remember I was like, I'm an actor now, so I need a serving job. I remember saying that. I was like, and another thing is like, pardon me, I couldn't rely on my parents. Like, again, like I had to always be making my own way. It
Uh-huh.
was just, I had no options. So I knew that if I wanted to be able to audition for theater, I needed to have a job that was flexible. That's always the terrifying thing about being an actor. You know, I'm sure a lot of your acting students can relate, is
Yes.
that, you have to be available. You get a call the night before that you have an audition tomorrow. You need to have a job that pays your rent, but also like that you can like pass on to somebody else
Yes.
if an opportunity arises, you know. And um I worked at a restaurant like well into my Supernatural. I was still working at a restaurant a year after my first Supernatural episode.
You didn't go, oh,
Like
I
I
made it, I'm quitting. You,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I kept working. I kept working. I love working at the restaurant. So I started working at a restaurant in Edmonton, and again, loved it, loved it, loved it. It taught me a thing. They always say like you can tell that you can always spot the people who've never had to work at a restaurant, because there is something about knowing how to navigate personalities and
Yes.
understanding what's your responsibility, what's not your responsibility, what to take on, what not to. Like that old saying, burgers and fries, nobody dies. It's like when you're serving tables, I know there's a lot of people who can relate to this, but when you're serving tables, it does touch your nervous system. If you're like, okay, table 7 needs to have their table cleared, these guys need their bill, these guys just sat down, they need water, these guys, and you're like,
Yeah.
ah, and so being able to navigate all of that with
Yeah,
all
I
while
get it.
also making sure you're hosting people and having a good time. Well, I was very good at it. And I really
I
liked
bet.
it. And so as I moved, like I lived in Edmonton for about 5 years, and then I moved to Toronto. And again, I had those skills, so I could always move around. I could always get a job at a restaurant. And when I moved to Toronto, I started working at kind of more high profile restaurants. And that was fascinating to me because I realized that there is a whole culture.
Yes.
There is like a celebrity culture in
In
restaurants
food,
and chefs.
absolutely.
And that was kind of exciting to me. You know, here I was an actor, but I was a struggling actor, but I was becoming kind of well known in the restaurant industry.
I bet.
And so I moved to Vancouver and then very easily got a job here. And through Vancouver, I met with some people who also wanted to start this food truck. And my partner, he's Mexican, and so he'd gone to cooking school in Toronto. That's where we met.
Wow.
And he just had all of these skills, and he wanted to kind of test them out. But he didn't have kind of the chutzpah that I had, you know. And so we kind of worked together with our business partners and created this food truck that ended up being on the Food Network. And we won 2 restaurant awards, and it was a big deal, but it was so much work.
It
When
is.
people say, and you know this, like when people say they want to open a restaurant, I was like, you get ready. Like, you get ready. It is so much work. And I remember I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the commissary kitchen, to pack the truck, to go to I don't know where. Like, and then I'd come back at 3:00, and then I'd pull the pork butts out of the smoker and I'd just shred them by hand. And
God,
it was so much work. It was so much work. Now, at that time, again, I wasn't, while I was doing the food truck, I just booked a role at the Arts Club, which is a big theater here in Vancouver.
Yes, huge.
This was, years ago. I booked a role in Blood Brothers, and I was like, great, I could take a break. Like, that's how I felt going into theater. And theater is like, as you said,
that's
like
exactly what happened. I'd be like, I've got to play, so I'd have to put someone else in the restaurant, and it would feel like I was on vacation.
It would feel like a vacation. And so then kind of after that, I started working a little more and stepped away from the food cart business, but I was working at a restaurant here in town, just hostessing a couple nights a week. Partially for the socialization. I love, again, it's like the theater thing. It's like a company of players all working towards one common goal. Is what it feels like to be a server, you know?
And it seems
I just love that.
That was also what I mean is so amazing about the history of Supernatural in the terms of how that show started and became such a family and one of the longest running shows. But those people basically grew up together, and the crew, the cast, sort of as one. I mean, I think sometimes we forget as actors, so much of what we love is that collaboration, that connection, that community. And I think for everybody who's listening, how do we each figure out how we create those communities? And sometimes we think, well, I can't open a restaurant, but if you gather with other people, or I can't make my own movie, or I can't start a podcast. But very often when we connect with others, I mean, some of our resilience and grit is going to come from that collaborative, like where we can help each other, because it's so hard to do anything alone. And often I think we shut down, you know? So that story is like super inspiring. I'm going to open it. I realize we could talk all night, but I'm going to open it to some of those questions and then bounce back and forth, because I still have so much that I want to ask you. So I'm going to start with a couple of these questions here. This is from Sue. She says, as a high school music and musical theater teacher, I often have students who are pressured to drop arts classes by their parents or guidance counselors because it's not a realistic, or it's considered a useless path. Any advice I can give to get through to parents to encourage and allow their kids to follow their dreams? That's a great question, Sue.
That's a tough one. What's funny is that when I was in high school, I was the same thing. I will tell you that I was not great at academics. I was like a good C+ student. And if I wanted to get higher grades, I would have to like stay after school, get tutored, mostly in maths and sciences is where I struggled. Point being is, like, I was still class president. And it's not because I was popular. It was because I was like, all right, let's get things done. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like when it comes to academics, I think that we are assuming that they are going to be the thing that's going to help every student. And I think that every person is truly an individual, and what is one person's strong point is not going to be everybody's strong point. When I was in high school, my guidance counselors wanted me to take more math. They were always like, they knew I wanted to be an actor, but they're like, in case you know something to fall back on. And I was like, well, I'm not going to fall back on math. Like, that's not my second choice. And my
Right.
parents were always like, no. My parents were very supportive. They were like, she wants to be an actor, she can be an actor. Now, that was, whatever, 20 years ago. I think the world is such a different place now.
Yes.
I truly think that the jobs and the opportunities that are available to people are, for the most part. There's obviously a lot of careers where you need to have a lot of academic smarts, but for a lot of the jobs, everything can be taught. I feel like everything can be taught, and I think that if you can give a young person sovereignty over their future and going, if this is what you want to do, how can I strengthen your grit to do that to its fullest?
Right.
Because I think the last thing you want is someone doing something, with half their momentum, or half their energy. And I think that if a student wants to go into the arts, if you can cultivate a spirit that makes them think that they can do it, then they just will, and they'll find a way to do it. If there's, if they want to be a singer and they don't have a
Mhm.
singing voice, you can develop a singing voice. You can learn how to be an actor. But if you are wanting to be an actor and somebody's going, well, I don't think you're going to be good at that, or I don't think that that's going to be safe, well, they're probably not going to put their all into it. And also, I think that safety is overrated
And
when it
these
comes
days,
to passion. Yeah.
so much of the world is a gig economy. It's not
Yes.
just acting
Yes.
anymore. It used to be
Great
maybe
point.
one of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
But
It's so true. That's a
there's
great point. The gig economy. I like that.
there's something about too. I mean, I know as obviously I'm coming from arts education, and I love it. I do think parents, of course, even my parents were fearful of my choices, and so I think that's normal. But I do think, as you said, Briana, that the world has changed. What they're saying, if you go to actually the United Nations stats, the creative economy is the biggest growing economy, because they're either these days so much is going to be automated, and we're going to need engineers and scientists, and we're going to need, we need all of that. But if you're not that, we also need the soft skills. The fact that you can go in and lead people, the fact that you can speak to those, every company now needs storytellers to tell the story of their company on their websites, to create video content, to become hosts for different things, to drive different aspects. Many actors who graduated from VFS, many go on to act, but many have said, one of the top real estate agents in Vancouver is one of our grads, and she said the acting school training is what made her the best, because she works with
to
people,
be a salesperson,
she knows their stories.
Yes.
So I feel sometimes I think parents maybe think the arts education only does one thing, but I believe arts education is about resilience, is about your grit, about finding your voice and speaking your truth, and finding maybe the passion and creativity you can have it in different ways, and
it's different ways. Like, you can diversify as an artist. It's not just about being, it's not like we're all on vaudeville anymore. It's just like, there's so many different, even you look at TikTok now. I mean, if you haven't gone down TikTok, don't do it. But
I saw
you can create entire series on TikTok.
Your sea shanty. I mean, just tell me about for the Supernatural fans. I mean, this Supernatural musical. I mean, that's part of the social media. You're using it with your podcast, with TikTok, with Instagram. I mean, tell us about that sea shanty. Was unbelievable. And
I take no credit for it. Honestly, it's the woman who wrote the song. I don't know her name. I can find it here, but she wrote this brilliant, just hilarious song. I mean, it wasn't even that funny. It was just actually kind of beautiful.
It is. It's both.
Laura Leviosa. So she wrote this beautiful song. And then Kim Rhodes, who's become TikTok famous because she has this, both of her fan bases. I mean, she has many fan bases, but her two big fan bases are Supernatural and Zach and Cody. And those age groups are the big age groups on TikTok.
Right.
And so, and she is just churning out the content, and she's so funny. And so what she'll do is I don't go on social media a ton right now, but she will send me a message going, hey, I just did something funny on TikTok if you want to play. Like, she'll literally just do that, and then I'll just do
Oh,
something funny. So we just fart around, we just have fun. And that's the thing, is like,
making stuff.
being in the arts is not about doing checkoff. It's not just about doing checkoff.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different opportunities to be an entertainer.
Are you you do voice acting as well, right? So how did that part of your world open up?
So I was doing, I wanted to dive into voice acting when I lived in Toronto. So that was 15 years ago. But it's very, very challenging to break into that industry because often they just recycle the same actors, because voice actors are so multifaceted and they can create so many different versions of their voices, so that you can hire the same actor to do 10 ads and they can sound total like 10 different people. So they don't bring in a lot of new people to the circle. And so I had a demo done when I was in Toronto, and I'd auditioned for a couple of things. And then when I moved to Vancouver, I got a voice agent here, and I tried to audition, but she wasn't sending me out a lot at that time. And then suddenly, kind of, there was this trend that was going around with voiceovers, which was it was like Demi Moore, kind of the whiskey voice they call. And my demo reel, when I did my demo reel, I had vocal notes. And so it was very like this. It was talking a lot like this, which is kind of a lazy way to talk. But in ads, in commercials, it was very big. Popular. Yeah. And so she was like, I was thinking about you. I want to start sending you out more. And then she did. And then I started booking. And then only in the last, I've been doing Chip and Potato now for 4 years, I think, because doing animation takes such a long period of time. We just finished recording season 2, and now they're drawing it. Like, I just did pickups on Monday for it. So that it just takes such a long time. But getting into the animation world was another time. It was another, and I hadn't experienced this for a while, where you're so new at something that you actually feel again like you're like, oh, I don't belong here. I'm so uncomfortable. But when you're doing cartoons, you are in the room with all the actors. Everybody has their own microphone. It's kind of like theater in that way. But all the actors that I was working with in Dorg Vandango, especially, had been in so many cartoons and were the best voice actors. Like, they could burp on cue. Like, they were so good. They could do any accent. They could pitch their voices high, voices low. They could sound like anybody. And I kind of I go in the 2 cartoons that I am in, I play the mom and play variations of kind of this voice. And so I would get so nervous I like to play. I like to be wacky and do funny voices, but in the room, I was so insecure that I was like, oh, all these amazing voice actors, and I'm going to do something. And then the directors everything goes so fast. The director will just be like, no, new choice. No, that's not good. New choice. That's literally what they'll say to you. And you're like, oh. Wow. So it was a great lesson to me. And I had lots of conversations with actors on that show where I'd be like, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this one thing. I'm good at this, but not this thing. And I had somebody say, and this is such a great thought moving forward and relating to so many different aspects of being an actor, as she said, there are so many roles that are only what you do. Yes. She's like, she says, your voice sticks to the tape, is what she says.
Oh, and she goes, I love that.
There is a tone to your voice that you cannot create. And there are a lot of wacky characters and that you have to put on funny voices, but there are also a lot of characters where they just want to hear authenticity and tone. And nobody can fake that. So you have built a niche for yourself simply by just doing what you do. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing to take forward into live action stuff. Is so often in live action, you know, if you're auditioning for young mom, I'm like, how can I look younger, or how can I look more like a mom?
Right. We try to
It's
fit
like,
in.
yeah, you try to create, try to fit into the role, when really we should be thinking about, how does the role look on me? How can I make this role look good on me? You
And
know?
that's your uniqueness that no one
Yeah,
else can ever do, Brianna. Like,
truly.
that's what you will bring in your sort of creative, and that's that. I think as people kind of go, hey, they're the ones, we're not trying to be or do something else, we're trying to bring something
Yeah.
authentic to the role or the
Yeah.
character or the voice. There's quite a few questions. Here's another one
Yeah. Bring
from
it.
Shauna. I know this from being out on from VFS, but your experience and having worked with so many others in the industry, how important or valuable have you found professional actor training in your career? And also, are there any resources you recommend for film or voice acting?
Um, so I mean, I went to theater school. And so I did learn a lot about acting, the history of acting, the art, commedia dell'arte, improv, all sorts of things like that. But I will be honest and say, I think that you can learn those things individually. It might take a little more, as we're saying, a little more grit, a little more, you know, motivation. You have to motivate yourself if you're not going in a class process. But I feel like if you are the kind of person that can watch, what I do all the time is I'll watch a TV show and I'll go, okay, so in this TV show, the camera would have been there, they would have been there, the
Yes.
actor would have been on the other side of the camera, they're actually in the camera, they're like, how many crew members were there? And then I'm like, okay, so what do you think they thought of to bring those tears at sentence 2? You know what I mean? Like, these are the things I think of. Whereas in theater acting, it's a through line. So when you're doing film acting, you're filming one scene at a time, whereas a stage play, you're doing the whole plot. You're
Right.
doing the whole episode all in, 60, 90 minutes. So I think that if you are the kind of person where you can go, I'm going to, like, I still now on casting workbook or whatever, if somebody's
Yes.
putting on hey, so-and-so is giving a talk, I'll go and listen to it.
Well, just
You
like
never
you're doing
know what
tonight.
little thing. Yeah. You never know what
Yes.
little, like, pocket of
Nugget.
inspiration you're going to, nugget you're going to find. But I loved theater school for lots and lots of reasons. Do I think it's absolutely necessary to be a good actor? Absolutely not. No. I think that if you can, I think education is necessary. I think training is necessary, but I think you can do that by putting yourself in front of a camera, acting out a scene, and then watching it after. I watch all of my stuff, all of it. I'll watch my conventions. I'll watch stuff at the conventions going, did I answer that properly? Did I
Uh-huh.
trail off when I watched it?
You're
Like,
learning. It's just like
yes.
sports, watching the afterplay of the
Yeah.
game. What
Yeah.
did I do? How can I improve? If you,
Always,
yeah,
always.
and
How can
taking class,
always improve. Yeah.
yeah, I think in terms of the voice, the body, the acting, the
Yeah.
technical aspects, voice acting. Again, like they say for so many things, it's like 10,000 hours to get that in.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
you do that at school where we have to
Yes.
organize all that, great.
Yeah.
Or that you continue to take classes and grow.
Yeah.
There's so many good questions. Someone wants to know how your audition, what was your audition for Supernatural like the first time you
Oh,
auditioned for it?
this is amazing. Is that, I think Jen, you and I talked about this before, but I was early on in my career and had not been auditioning for big roles. So I'd been auditioning for EMT, like shopper,
Right.
shopping girl or whatever.
Those
Roles
entry
that had like
level
a few
roles.
lines, one scene, usually just one scene. And then I had auditioned for nurse number 2 for Supernatural, and I got a call back for it. And I was so, as you know, like, getting a call back is so
Right.
exciting
Yay.
and affirming. Yeah. And then I didn't get it and I was crushed. I was so sad. And then, like, a week later, I got an audition for Sheriff Donna. And I
Wow.
remember I was not available for that audition. So I was like, I'll get the next one. When you do that and you're just like,
Yeah.
I'm not available. It's fine. It's not in the cards or whatever. And then I remember getting a call the next day from my agent saying, they still want to see you. So can
Oh
you
my
come in the
gosh.
next day? And this was just a preliminary audition. And the role was so great. It was written so great. She has an accent, and that was great. And I was unbeknownst to many, pregnant at the time. And so but it didn't matter because I was showing just a little bit, but the
Yes.
character is chubby, and so it all worked out perfectly. And then I got a call back for the audition, and it was for the producers and the director. So Phil Segretia and Jim Michaels are the producers and executive producers of the show, and Phil Segretia was directing the show. And he comes in, and he is like, he's from Detroit. He's like this, big kind of gruff guy, and he's like, "Hey, okay, I want to hear an accent. Like this is he's shouting things at you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, no problem." He's like, "Okay." And so I did the scene, and then I found out like 2 days later that I got the part, and I was so excited. But I was no more excited than any of the other roles that I got. And I think I was
Right.
more excited because it was 3 days on set instead of one. I was like, this
Yes.
is great. This is gonna be fun. And then I remember going to my wardrobe fitting, and Phil came in, and Phil was literally like, and I remember hearing this from a few other people who Phil and Jim had conversations with about me. Phil was like, "You came in, and we thought, where the hell has she been? Like, where does she come from?" And I was like, "Really?" Oh my God. And he was like, "What were you doing before?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't really been doing much television." And he was like, "Oh, you just do features?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I do theater and comedy." Um, and so that
Wow.
was how I was treated walking into set. And I had no idea, because in my heart, I was like, "Oh, I don't have that many credits, and I haven't acted that much in television." But they didn't see that. They thought I was like a movie star because of how I showed up to that audition. And I didn't
Yeah.
show up that audition going, I'm the best thing that ever
No.
walked. I showed up going, I can do this part. I got this.
Exactly.
But I also didn't put all of my worth into that role. I was like, here's just another role. I'll audition for another role again if I don't get this one. Like, I didn't sign myself over to them. I went,
Yes.
here's what I can do for you. And so when I walked on set,
Nice.
and Jensen, who's the star of Supernatural, he
Yes.
tells this story as well, because it's funny is that, the first scene that I was in, my first episode was the first scene I actually shot with them. And I was just actually quite nervous because I found it very challenging to hit your mark, which is something that you don't learn in theater school. And
Right.
so I was just trying not to screw up. But Jensen thought I was being so serious, and it was a comedic scene. And he was trying to make me laugh, and I was just not cracking. So he thought I was the world's greatest comedian because he couldn't make me laugh. And I was like, oh, I was just paying attention. I was just focused. So anyway,
Oh my
it's a funny
God.
thing when you talk about luck, is that a friend of mine is in town directing. A friend of mine from Supernatural is in town directing, and we were chatting the other day with some crew members. We're all still in touch. Everybody in Vancouver. I'm very close to the crew members from Supernatural,
That's
and we were
incredible.
chatting about luck, and we were talking about, I said I believe luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And he
Agreed.
said, well, I think that's true, but he said there is still a lightning in a bottle scenario.
Yes.
There is still, like, you got this opportunity while you had done this preparation, and then it went,
Yeah.
there was still something in the universe that made
That
it do
sparked.
this. Yes, yeah. So I don't know, for Supernatural, that was just like, there is this kind of amazing origin story for my start at Supernatural. Also because it wasn't even a guest star role. It was just like a walk. It was just a walk. I was just a character that was
Oh,
relaying information, and
that's
it's
incredible.
it's the dream. It's the actor's dream, is to go like, I'm going to show up and do this job. And it ended up completely changing my life.
And I think those are those little things along the way. Sometimes we don't know where those sparks are going to be. And so
You don't
sometimes we
know.
judge things like, oh, this is only this or this is only that. But you have to kind of go into everything with the right openness
Yes.
and just bring yourself and your truth to it. And
You
because
never
that's where the
know.
sparks might happen. I think
Yep.
part of it is that you were ready for that spark and you brought
Yeah.
that kind of energy and
Yeah.
that 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 you shot from the hip, literally, Sheriff
Yeah.
Donna.
Yeah.
Like you can
Truly.
tell in how you've created this character. She's just a woman who's like, I'm real and I'm here and I'm not going to take no for an answer. So there's
Yeah.
something really amazing about that spirit that you brought. There's a couple. Oh, there's lots more. how do you figure out which roles you will take, and which sometimes have you turned down roles or things that you don't feel comfortable doing?
How do you turn down roles that you don't want to do?
Or what, how do you figure out which roles you want to take, or have you turned down roles? How have you make those, like, how do you navigate some of those choices as a woman or a person making those in the industry?
Well, I try not to turn down too much. I actually had a friend, this is a great example. When I moved to LA last year, I mean, I literally was not last year, the year before. Um, and I was there for about a year, just auditioning. And there was lots of stuff that I was getting sent that I was like, I'm not right for this. This is not, I'm not going out for this. I'm not what they're looking for. And I had a girlfriend tell me a story about a character from Modern Family, um, who this character uh, was written in the breakdown as like a hot dad, super beefy, like, super cut, athletic. And then the actor that got the audition was not that. And he's like, I'm not going out for this. And then he ended up booking the role, even though he was nothing like what the breakdown was asking him to be. So that taught me that you, again, as we were saying with the previous example, you never know, but also that there are so many things at play that if I see an audition and I go, I'm not right for this, this is not me. I always have to think, and I go, can I be right for it though?
Right.
Is there a world where I actually want to be right for it? But more than anything, I really right now, especially right now, I try to lead with things that light me up. Like if I read a script and I go, oh, I could do this. And it's not if it's the best script in the world. It's not if it's the best character in the world. If it's like, there's just something about it where I can go, oh, I'd be good at this. Yeah. Or yeah, it's just going to have a little something that makes me light up. If it doesn't light me up, meaning like, maybe I've read too many. There's a lot of sad mom roles. I always make jokes. I'm like, oh, I auditioned for a lot of sad moms. But
yeah, a
there's
lot of my actor friends, they judge it by how many times they're going to have to cry in their
have to cry.
Scenes. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not an actor that is like, it takes a lot of energy for me to cry a lot on set. Some actors, it doesn't take that. So sometimes I go, I don't think I could do that. And then I feel okay with saying no to that because there will be other opportunities. And I truly believe that what's meant for you will not pass you by. Like I really do believe that. And I try, and that keeps me from getting super anxious or worried about any of that. But yeah, I try not to turn too much down. But I will, not afraid to.
Yeah, and I think that's those personal choices people have to make in the industry. And I think it's always knowing what those personal boundaries are and being able to speak, again, finding your voice and speaking to those things. If you're on set and something, is asked of you that is not comfortable, that you're not afraid to talk about it or negotiate and find out what those boundaries are in terms of what. And I think as we navigate, no matter what we do, whether that's as actors or anything in our world, it's kind of knowing what our boundaries are and being at the same time knowing what you can bring to something. And that is, I think, being open to those opportunities. There's quite a few questions.
I will say, oh, sorry. I just wanted to add that I am very, I'm wary of breakdowns that don't describe a female character other than how she is associated to a male character.
How she looks
do have
in a male gaze.
Well, two things, but yeah, like how if it goes, she is the adoring wife of so and so, and that's the only description. I was like, well, that's bullshit. But I had her audition recently, and the breakdown for it was just homely woman, and I was like, really? There was nothing else you could do? There was nothing else. And I, of course, don't think that I'm homely, but I can play homely. But you gotta give me something else. Like it was just so offensive to describe any female character that way.
I hope there's more female writers in the room here with us, writers, producers, directors, that we change that as we go forward in this industry. Now there's we're gonna wrap up in probably about 10 minutes. Thank you, if that's okay with you. But
yes, I'm having the best time.
Questions. I know people are probably needing to go. Hopefully, you're not going inside to celebrate, but you might be going outside to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. And I just thank you so
Yes.
much for all your time. A lot of people are asking questions about, dealing the kind of what we've spoken about in terms of how hard it can be, not only, in the industry, juggle as an actor, juggling with waitressing jobs. I know as a young actor, you did VFS student films, and those kind of things, putting in, like, looking for those opportunities, and maybe dealing with some of your own. Have you ever dealt with things of, when you might feel down or depressed or anxious, or our nerves, those overcoming those hurdles that all of us feel, that are completely normal and sometimes get the better of us. So speaking about those times when you had to dig in to face some of those challenges, and those things that you can do to activate, whether you're a young actor looking to get experience or not feel so alone, what are those, do you have, people want to know what kind of advice that you may have in terms of motivation or dealing with those things?
Yeah. So when I feel, and I feel like this often, and I think this is, I mean, I don't know if this is just entertainers or actors on a whole, or just me, but I always say it to my partner, Jose. I'm always like, oh, I'm so lazy. I'm so lazy. And he's just like, how can you think that you're lazy?
Right.
And so that has been something, over the last year or so, that I've had to, as there aren't as many things to do during this time.
Yes.
I've had to really look at that feeling and going, what do I feel like I need to prove? Like, I think there's something about being an actor, where so much of it is just is performative. Like, it's performative in nature, as well as, like, it's performative emotionally. So when we don't get an opportunity to be still with ourselves, very often, because we are always giving out energy, as I was saying earlier, in hopes of receiving a reflection. Yeah. When we're not able to receive as much, it really does become up to us to go, how do I become my own, how do I become my own giver and receiver? And that is not an easy thing to do, but it is so worth the work. Like, and it really will show up in your work as well. If you are auditioning, especially if you're auditioning in front of a producer director, and you are not desperate for the role, they will want you that much more.
Yes.
Because they will think that you are a commodity. If you come off as like, I want this, but I don't need it, they'll go, oh, isn't that interesting? But I think, just in terms of, like, your own nervous system, like, if you really want to do this for life, you have to find a way to be able to do it forever. That's a long time. And rejection is hard on the nervous system.
Yes.
So you have to cultivate this kind of practice of being okay whether you get it or not. The reality is, and I've seen this so many times, is that you could be the best person for the job. But if your hair is too blonde, you won't get the role. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to a friend, and he was saying that he suggested one of his friends for a show, and she had red hair, and the producer said, well, we had a redhead on 2 episodes ago. And it was, I've lost roles before because they thought I looked too much like the lead. Like, there's just insane things. Like, you don't look good on the poster. There are so many things in film, television, that are reasons why you don't get the role. You cannot tell yourself it's because you're not good.
Yes.
It is your job to constantly be telling yourself that you are good, because you might be the only one that you're saying that to out loud. So you have to constantly do it. And it is really up to you. This sounds like, I recognize it sounds trite. This sounds very, like, self-lovey and all of that,
but
it's so true.
Effort. It takes effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it works. And it's necessary if you want to do it for the long haul. You've got to cultivate something where you don't need it. You just want it.
And that's, I think, ultimately back to the heart of the creative spirit, which is the ability to make something or to get other people together. I mean, a few questions here, and then we'll wrap up. But I think to that point, this Roxanne, she's sending love from the UK. She graduated from drama school last year, and it's a big transition in the industry during a pandemic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Professionally and mentally, and that you've already given this advice for her struggling during this time. I think that, like you said, to create those spirits, there's so much. I mean, you can gather with a group of actor friends and do a script reading. You can
Online,
create
yeah,
TikTok
script reading.
videos.
You can take any classes. You can take comedy classes online. I would just do anything. I signed up early on. I signed up for master class, and I was like watching Helen Mirren talking, and I would just consume as much content about the thing you love as humanly possible. And there's so much online. I would read stuff. I really am serious about putting yourself on tape. I think it's fascinating for us to always notice the idiosyncrasies that we do that we're not aware of. Like even me talking with my hands right now. There's so much that you can do. Try to not think of this time as like time that you're missing out on, and try to think of it as a gift of like extra time for you to practice, And I would just say like, do as much as you can from home. I watch so much TV, and I used to feel so lazy. I was like watching TV again, but I was like, I have watched so much TV, and it really gives you a taste. You develop a taste for good scripts, good acting, good directing, good editing, like all of these things you really need to have a taste for. So I would just say consume.
It's a skill to watch it, not just as an audience, but to watch it from whether you want to be a writer, producer, director, actor, or a mixture of all these things, because you don't just have to be one thing. And you are already creating and making things happen. And it's incredible what, with a phone, what you can do, right? And you can shoot.
I shoot all of my auditions with my phone.
You don't
I have a phone, I have a ring light, I have a blue blanket. So that's it. That's all you need.
It's all you need. And I know there's so many, I think we've covered most of them. There's, people about to graduate from high school and are into the acting and the performance art. Is there any last advice that you give to people who are aspiring actors who are at that place you were, when you were in Moose Jaw, and imagining if this was possible? Is there any last advice that you would like to give to those people with that dream that sometimes seems like it's impossible, but really I think is absolutely possible if you're
realistic. That's exactly it. Is like, when I was living in Moose Jaw and wanted to be an actor, this life and the things that I've been able to do, and not even just being on Supernatural, I mean, the conventions, traveling the world, my album, the podcast, anything that has come since was never in like my plans. In the best way. Like never did I think that I was going to be on television. I always wanted to be on Broadway. And then I remember when I went to New York to do my first show, part of my tour, I was sitting having a glass of wine on this rooftop hotel, looking out at the city lights of New York. And I was like, how did this happen? And my point is like, you never know. And I really feel like quitting is something that feels good in the moment because you feel like you're serving yourself in the moment, but you're not serving your future self. And I feel like if you feel like you need to quit, just rest. Just take a moment. It is okay to rest. It is okay to tell yourself that you're resting. And
hallelujah.
You're not quitting. Yes.
Hallelujah, sister.
So I say keep going. Keep going, keep working, and do what feels good and what feels aligned and what feels authentic.
And that, I think that's where that integrity of, choosing things, like it isn't trite because it's actual. You have to take each step. You can imagine the big future, but it only happens if you take those steps. I mean, making an album, you have to take the first, it doesn't just like album, like you have to do all the steps to do that. So
I always say that like success is like a snowball rather than a ladder. Meaning like you never know what tiny little thing is then tomorrow going to be the biggest thing of your entire career. You never know.
It turns those corners. Please, everyone, reach out. Briana has got an incredible stuff out on social media and her Instagram and her album and on Netflix. And podcasts, and you're such a creative force. Where do you get your energy? Do you get to sleep a lot, or where do you get it?
No, I'm the worst sleeper on the face of the planet. I really am. Oh my goodness. But I really, during this time, have been taking really pretty epic care of myself.
Yes.
And I have not done that for a long time. I think for a long time, I was treating myself like I was invincible. I think we do that when we're young. And as I, got into my late 30s, I was like, oh God, I don't feel very good. And so this year, it's been really just like small routines, going for walks in the morning when
Yes.
you wake up. I quit drinking coffee, if you can believe
Wow.
it. Yeah, I know. And I just was like, no, this is me and I'm first. I'm putting my mask on first, man. And I think that we all could serve others better if we chose to take care of ourselves fully and wholly first. And that's what I'm choosing to do.
Thank you so much for your time, your
Oh,
energy,
my
this
pleasure.
conversation. It was a big inspiration for me. And I think we all need, especially in these, coming out of these dark year of this pandemic, that inspiration from others and creating community here with all of our audience, our VFS students, alumni, and the people around the world, the supernatural fans. Thank you for sharing so generously from your heart and your soul and your intelligence. It was such a pleasure, Briana. I wish you a wonderful St. Patrick's Day with your family.
Thank you.
And I look forward to running into you and maybe collaborating down the road.
Yes, I would love that. Love, love, love.
So thank you so much. And
thank
everybody
you.
else.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Matt.
And to all your students at VFS, I send my love to you. And I just keep going. I've been in your position and it's going to get better and it'll be better than you can even imagine. So just keep going.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Briana. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.